Well, hello, greetings and salutations to the 310 tribe, wherever you might be tonight. It's so good to be with you here on a Saturday night, on approaching midnight. It's a little bit earlier than my normal time, only because I am speaking in Winchester, Kentucky tomorrow at the church, Grace Bible Chapel. And I think the service starts at like 10 or 10:15. So I'll be speaking then, and I should be live streamed. So just look up Grace Bible Chapel, Winchester, Kentucky. And if I have the link for it ahead of time, I'll post it. So, anyways, just another update is just Monday night. I'll be doing my Monday Night Live. Tuesday, I'll be on with Pastor Gary McKibben. It'll be, I think it's like 4 or 5 Eastern Standard Time. So, and then and then I have I got to give so there's a bunch of people I need to get with and reschedule. This last couple weeks have been really crazy. I mean, this past week, in fact, I mean, 12-hour days every day, 5 in the morning till like late in the evening, no cell phone service. I've just been completely out of the net for most of this week. So if you've texted me or called or anything or emailed and I haven't responded, that's probably why. So, with that said, I have on my good friend Dr. Mark Vickers, and tonight we're going to have just kind of a myriad of topics and conversations about things, and then a little bit of Q&A from you guys. I am going to cut it tonight around 9:30 because Eastern, so I can go to bed and get a good night's sleep for tomorrow. But and yeah, oh yeah, I forgot. If you hadn't seen my video with David Fiorosa, um, I encourage you to check it out. It's a good video. We're talking about the military, Middle East, Israel, Iran, what's next, all that kind of stuff. So good video and a good interview with my brother in Christ, Dave. So without further ado, going to bring on Mark. Howdy, Mark. How are you?
Hey, doing well. Good to see you. Well, not much has happened
Good.
since last we talked, right? So,
It's been a month, right? Yeah, pretty much my whole world has completely changed between then and now. And I have facial hair. That I'm day
I
Oh gosh, what day? I don't know what day I started. It's like day 20, and this is the longest it's ever been. I've
oh
never had it
man,
facial hair this long, and
I'm I'm not in the
can't
cool
tell if
kids
I hate it
club.
or I love it.
Yeah,
Do what?
I said I'm not in the cool kids club.
I wasn't either, man. I told Tom I was like, man, you guys all have beards, man. I gotta just fit in. I had to get some facial hair to fit in or something. So
Did Tom bully you to do that?
yeah, you a little bit. Yeah, it was like coercion.
Yeah, I thought
If
so.
you want to be a the keynote speakers all have beards. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, but
I don't think that's going to happen for me.
So, just for the audience, I was going to let folks know, and hello to everybody. Hello to the moderators. Good to see everybody on here. If you see my name pop up on the chat, it's probably one of my kids. And anyway, so my mom's on here. Hey, mom, I see you there. Um, so, what is it? How long ago was it? A year that I wrote Blink? No, not a year.
No, it was like 8 months.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
it's been a bit. It's been a minute, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, right.
I had put out a call for somebody to, if anybody could do some editing, and so that's your wife let you know, and that's how you and I got connected. But you were at the Roseburg Church when I spoke there. What was it 3 years ago?
3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So and Lori had invited me to that church. I didn't even know it existed. So hat tip to Lori for the initial invite, and
Yeah.
then I don't think, did I physically meet you there? That like, did you and I shake hands, or was it
We
just
actually we didn't. I just heard you speak.
uh,
So yeah.
well, let's you have a book too that you did, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. And you sent it to my house, but you sent it right as I was coming here, and I've been here exactly the same amount of time you sent it back.
Yeah.
So
We sort of
let's
sent
talk.
each other our books at the same time, and they just kind of crossed paths.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All right, great. Well, and so the topic for tonight, really, I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, is iron sharpens iron, so one friend sharpens another, and Proverbs 27:17. And that for me had been a really meaningful starting point for relationships in my life, and so much so that I didn't even realize till I was perhaps in my 50s how much I needed somebody, especially somebody that was a little more mature than me spiritually, to come alongside and sharpen me. And and I didn't even know, what does that mean to be sharpened? And so all of those things were just, rolling around in my mind and my heart. And when when COVID hit, and I was, uh, I got really sick, not just with COVID, but with some other things, and it just knocked me out. And it was that at that point I realized, I don't really understand what's going on in my life right now. I'm really struggling, and so where did I go? I went to the Word, but I specifically went to the Proverbs because it was there that I found kind of a lens to
Yeah.
discern truth, and to know that, God still had a plan for me, and I wasn't, my suffering wasn't just arbitrary, and then I would get through this, and that God loved me, and there was a purpose for me, and that all these things were the impetus for me to start sort of journaling. And that journaling was meant for myself, but ultimately it turned into a devotional that is a leadership development devotional, specifically looking at the Proverbs. So this is the book, Proverbial Leadership, um, a 60-day call to a life of wisdom, prayer, and influence. And you can find it on all the sites, Amazon, and that sort of thing. But for me, it was just a great starting point to make sense of a chaotic world. And so that's kind of where we're going to be tonight, uh, is looking at some of the current events and seeing if we can discern how to make sense of them. If there's one thing that I've learned over the last few years after sort of starting the book, was it's okay not to have the answer, right? You don't
Yeah.
have to have all the answers.
Yeah. Yeah. None of us do. And something you said earlier, I think that most of us, I would say 99.9% of us are pretty screwed up people. I mean, we're all broken.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure there's one or two people out there that really have it kind of all together in every facet of their lives, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, physically. But everybody else, we just, we all have drama, and it doesn't even have to be our drama. It could be a kid's, it could be a spouse, it could be as a sibling, a parent, a something with your job.
hmm
There could be some kind of a physical thing that we have that, it could be a mental thing, spiritual thing. Like all of us have issues. Even the people that we look at their lives and we think, man, they have it all together. They don't. I promise you they don't.
they
I know
don't.
enough of these people to know that they don't.
Yeah,
Everybody has it. Everybody has issues. And I think that we get so conditioned looking on, watching TV or social media, and you got these people with this like kind of perfectly curated and picture perfect kind of, perfect marriages. And
yeah,
these are like little glimpse. We get little snippets of their lives,
right. But
but
what's
we don't
interesting
see
about,
the whole thing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, we don't, and they don't want you to. However, I will say this: those people exist in our churches and our friendships and our families, and they are often the ones that most need somebody to come alongside them and say, you know what, can we just go have coffee and just talk? And maybe there's not even an agenda.
Yeah.
I'm constantly surprised at how meaningful it is to somebody when you just say, "Can we just hang out for a little bit of time?" And there doesn't have to be a topic, but in fact, that happened to me this morning, with a gentleman, and it was just really powerful. And there's nothing special about what I said. I mostly just listened, but it was powerful to him. And I just know that those people that are hiding, or they seem like they're introverted, or they're not approachable. Man, those are the people that really want you to come alongside them and just be part of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's I think especially with a little bit of the older generation, maybe the boomers and before, are
Mhm.
much more inclined to not want to share their feelings or not want to talk about perceived weaknesses or perceived issues because they just grew up in a different time when you just handled your business, you know, you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
broadcast it on Facebook or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but the subsequent generations are pretty much more open to talking about their feelings and expressing themselves. But like, my parents were boomers,
Mhm,
and my mom really my dad. I mean, that guy had very little emotions when it came to like like I didn't feel like I had a mentor, teaching me how to grow up to be a man
mhm.
because my dad was always working, he was always gone. Here
Right,
I am, I'm working, I'm gone. What kind of a role model am I repeating my father? Like
yeah,
I think
yeah.
about all these
Right,
things,
right.
and even though I've tried to do everything I could to not be in this situation, I feel like I'm in this situation nonetheless. But, I think my relationship with my son is a little different than mine was with my dad. I talk to
Mhm,
my son. I never talk to my dad ever, like hardly ever,
mm, mhm.
and technology was different too. When he was gone, he would have to go to a payphone or find, like
Yeah,
it's
right.
different now when we can just kind of reach out and touch each other, talk all the time, or I
Yeah,
talking to my daughter earlier, Chloe, and I can text the kids or they're texting me throughout the day
right.
when I have cell phone signal. But it's I don't know. I think we're all kind of messed up people because none of us came from perfect situations. The two most perfect people that ever lived, they quickly messed things up, and we're kind of a byproduct of everything else. So if they got messed up and they were perfect, I mean, we're going to
Yeah,
be messed up. I
yeah,
mean, we
right.
just it's
Right,
it's inevitable.
yeah. And, it's interesting too, talking to broken people, um, more times than not, the more broken, the more they feel like God won't either forgive them or help them out of it. Now, I don't know why they feel that way necessarily, but coming alongside somebody that's truly broken and really struggling, that's a real issue for them, is the sense that God can forgive them if they ask for it, and can start the healing process for them. And maybe that healing, emotional or physical or whatever it is, won't be this side of heaven completed, but it will start. And some people just feel so despairing that they don't even trust that God is big enough to do that, and that's a shame, but we can absolutely assure people that that's not true, because it's not been true in our lives, if we're honest.
Yeah. Well, and I think let's talk like prophecy, for example. We look at something like the fulfillment of them putting up a sign to the new temple in Jerusalem.
Mhm.
That is or declaring that one of the heifers is perfect, and or one of
Right,
the we look at those kinds of things. We're like, oh, that is there. It is. It's prophecy happening.
right.
But then something happens in our own lives, and we think God's not big enough to like, or cares or knows about these issues. Like He knows, man. He knows about your issues before you know about them,
Yeah,
and he cares just as much about the big picture as he does the little pictures, and we're the little pictures in this, right? So
it is, yeah.
he's all about the details. God is all about the details. Look at creation itself. Look how for thousands of years, from let's just say at least from the time immediately after the flood, Noah and his sons
Mhm,
forward, you know um thousands of years, mankind would not know that atoms existed, or that DNA existed, and that we have
mhm,
genetics, and that we have the we can split atoms, we can do all this stuff. We're the furthest stars and the furthest galaxies,
mhm,
and all the things that we've discovered in the bottom of the ocean. For thousands of years, mankind would not have the technology to get to even know that those things were a thing.
mhm,
Yet God put them in from the beginning. He
mhm.
put all those details in from the beginning, and
Yeah,
they've always been there. He cares about the details, and he cares about our lives as much as our flesh, me, even me. Like there are times when I'm thinking, like, God doesn't care. If He
mhm.
cared, I wouldn't be here. I'd be back in Texas, working. But for whatever His
Right.
reasons and purposes, that door stayed solidly shut. I mean, it wasn't even cracked a
It
little.
Right, right.
And I just gotta assume that this is, part of the bigger plan,
Mhm.
even though I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Um, But
Well, you know, there's a great proverb, 16 verse 1. It says, "We can make our plans, our own plans, but God gives the right answer." And I, you know, I live that. It seems like daily that I want to plan for the future, and I have this struggle between, you know, okay, the rapture, you know, the rapture's coming, right? But I still have to live my life, and I have to plan, and I have to do things to support my family, and you know, I have dreams, and I have things that I want to accomplish, but sometimes it just seems futile because, well, what if we're gone tomorrow? You know, I mean, that's great, but how do I think about those things? And so, you know, I'm sure a lot of us struggle with that as well.
yeah, yeah. Proverbs is a great book to reset your baseline. You know what I mean? Like to if
Yeah.
you feel like your life's spinning out of control, that is a great book to go through. And not only that, but the Psalms is too. I mean, the Psalm book of Psalm has got so many just
Yeah.
those, and there's to me there's a divine providence of why those two books are in the middle.
Yeah.
Because they know that in the middle of life, our life has the most struggles. And if you just think about how the books of the Bible are put together,
Right.
you naturally lay it open flat. You're probably going to hit one of those two books most of the time.
Right.
But
Right. There are,
um,
speaking of Psalms, there are two Psalms, verses in Psalms that I sort of resonate with now in this season of my life. And one is Psalm 27:14, where it says, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord," which, you know, there's a lot of waiting in our lives of faith. And then in Psalm 46:10, it's, "Be still and know that I am God." And if there's a place that I want to camp out in right now, it's there, because
yeah,
the things that I try to do often have absolutely no power or value. In fact, you know, when we were talking offline, Pete, I was commenting about, you know, I wasn't really sure what direction we should go with tonight, because I just thought I couldn't plan anything. There was nothing that was, you know, coming to mind, but I thought the Holy Spirit would just lead us in this time. So I'm really grateful for that. Not my plans, but His.
and it's funny because I was gonna I Pastor Lee from that church I'm speaking at tomorrow, Grace
Mhm.
Bible. He asked me about a month ago. I think, hey, would you be interested in coming to speak? And I said, yeah. And I said, I kind of have. I was at the time I was thinking of something, and then it's just kind of it just stagnated. Like I didn't feel like I
Mm,
got any momentum in that.
yeah.
And then just like yesterday, I had this idea of something completely different, and then I got it all done. So
You're like, okay.
I feel like so that's the message. But I did tie my original thoughts in. So I still because I feel like the two of them do go together.
Hmm. Right.
So
Right.
anyways. All right. Well, 8:35, and I have this one last thing I want to catch with you on, and then I do want to go to some Q&A if we can, because those generally take a little bit longer. But
Sure.
I do want to talk about loneliness and connections,
Hmm.
and so we live in this weird age, right, where we can have fellowship here, and people are kind of all over the world right now, and we're kind of tuning in, and there's familiar names and personalities, and some people do have those friendships offline, which is
Hmm.
totally fine. None of my business. I don't care. And that to me is like the more important one, because like that's where we're checking up on each other and just saying, "Hey, how you doing, man? I haven't heard from you in a while. I haven't talked to you in a while," or
Yeah. Yeah.
blah blah blah. And to me, I feel like this is great. The fellowship part of it's great. It's something that for us to kind of hang out with like-minded people. And then, I mean, that's why prophecy conferences are so popular, because like you get to hang out with people like you.
Mhm.
It's great because you're
Right.
not ever around that.
Right. Right.
Hardly ever. So it's a good feeling. And so I know being in the watchman community and just all the stuff that we're into and watching, it seems so it's running polar opposite directions from the way the world is going, you
Hmm.
know and it just feels like it feels very isolating, because the things I'm passionate about and want, I mean, like it's just like this, like I can talk about most things, but when you get me going on prophecy, man, you can see my
Yeah.
energy levels, like,
You light up.
and I
Right.
just like, you can see like it's a change that happens, and I
Right.
can't help it. And I love that happens. I get excited about it because it's something I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
My kids, my family. When I meet new people, I talk about my kids all the time. I was
Yeah.
like, "Hey, my daughter does this, my son does this,
Yeah.
and so I those are things that I'm passionate about. And finding people that are passionate about Bible prophecy in the last days when it's perilous times and people are going to be lovers of themselves and people
Right.
don't care about this stuff and then the world is planning for the next 1,000 years and like we must seem, and tell me if you think this, we must seem like like mental or spiritual Amish people to them.
I think we seem like weirdos, in
Yeah,
so
right.
many ways. We seem like
Hare
weirdos
Krishnas.
to, like, mature Christians that just really haven't been exposed to prophecy too, and so that's you know, that that makes us feel isolated and lonely. We were talking earlier that there's sort of this movement. In fact, it's an epidemic, and there's lots of research to support this too, that there's an epidemic of loneliness in the world, and certain countries experience it a little bit more than others. Japan is probably the worst, actually. But for people in general, they don't have deep connections with other people, even if they're married. And research shows this over and over again. At the end of life, people look back and they say, if I would have done something over, it would have been I would have built into these relationships more. And so they just kind of crave that. And the irony of this connected world we live in with social media and the access to the entire world is that it's actually isolating. People are unable, they get so much information that they are unable to process it. And so in a face-to-face relationship, there's an interaction that takes place that's relatively manageable, right? So there's a conversation, there's emotions, there's facial expressions, and we can manage that and we can handle it and we can process it well. But online or via text, it just, we don't know where to put that in our brain and heart, and it's just really, it's sad. The other element that's hard that I see often, and what you just spoke about, is you sort of feel like nobody understands this weird thing that you like called prophecy, right? That you're watching for things, and it's just very isolating. I see it in my church, and our pastor is a prophecy good a guy, but the congregation in general are like, maybe take it or leave it.
Yeah. And I don't know what that stems from. And I'm not talking about the diehard liberal skeptics or like the Sadducees who just mock all of that stuff. And I'm not even talking about a millennialist or preterist
Right.
necessarily. I mean, I'm talking about people that go to a church, a good church, where their pastors do teach on prophecy.
Hmm.
And I think they kind of just take it for granted. Like it's just not a big thing to them because they think they're always going to hear it. But they don't realize how few and how precious those few churches are left in the US. There's hardly any of them
Yeah.
left. And,
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I
it
think the last time I was on, we talked a little bit about Second Timothy chapter 3, and
mm,
here, this is the last book that Paul writes to his protege Timothy, right? So he's sharpening his iron, preparing him for his future. And he says something really interesting. He goes, in the last days, Timothy, evil men will go from bad to worse. So I mean, that's like a heads up. But he also lists 19 character qualities that will take place, like behavioral changes in people in the last days. And so when we see those things, even in the context of our church, like around us, it's hard to make sense of them unless you have a mindset that sees things with at least a partial lens of prophecy, because it doesn't make sense. Why is the world spinning out of control? Why are people's behaviors changing? And you want to talk about that, like face to face with people. You have coffee with them. You want to talk to, maybe your spouse or your kids, and sometimes it's just not there. So my humble advice would be, pray that the Lord brings like-minded people into your life to do that, and he will.
he will. Yeah. I remember, just before we move on to Q&A, but I remember feeling very isolated when we moved up to Decatur and,
Hmm.
outside of Fort Worth. And we were there during COVID. So you had the shutdown, everything, everybody was kind of staying at home. And, um, I felt isolated. I did because I there wasn't anybody in my local area that I knew that really was into prophecy like I was.
Right.
And it wasn't until Lee Brainerd came down, he was driving through and he just said, "Hey, can I stop by?" And I was like, "Yeah." So we hung out for a few hours and then
Yeah.
he's heading on at the time he was heading on to Tyler's house. And I was like, "Who's Tyler?" And he's talking about it's generation 2434. And I'm like, what are you I didn't know what that meant. I
Oh,
had no
yeah,
idea
yeah.
like who that was or what
What's a
that was
20
about.
generation? Yeah, right.
I thought it was a restaurant or something like or some kind of business I had no idea what it was. And anyway,
That's his handle.
uh so now that I knew he was in the area, come to find out there's a bunch of people. So, we just God will open those doors for fellowship and but it is if you have people in your local area that aren't part of your church, maybe they're part of this group or they're, through the rev through 10.net or they're through some other kind of prophecy group that you
Right.
have. If y'all guys live in the same area, man, just get together like once a month, like a book club, just get together, have coffee. Doesn't have to be anything super organized or structured, but
Yeah, yeah.
just to encourage each other.
I totally agree, and I think, having intentionality about it is important, but structure is not necessary. It's getting together with people and just sharing your life with them. And here's part of the problem with that we all face, right? It's how deep do I go? Like, because I've got to trust these people if I don't really know them well. So it just takes time. I mean, you can trust them
Yeah,
if
yeah.
they I if you take the time to allow that trust. And it doesn't work all the time, but the benefit is so much greater than not having it.
Yeah, and just for folks, if I meet you at the conferences or whatever, if we're still here, heaven forbid we're still here for another year or so. If I ever meet you at a prophecy conference and you look at me like I should know you, but I don't know you, it's because I don't know who you are. I might know your name or your username or something, but I don't know like your face or something,
Right.
unless you have a picture. And even then it's like tiny picture. I really don't know what people look like
Yeah.
and I've had so many people come up to me and they just kind of expect me to know them because they watched all my videos and they it's
Yeah.
that familiarity that they have with me, but I don't they're
Yeah.
just some
Yeah.
random person, until
They've
they
got
start
this
talking to me.
they've got this relationship with you that you're not reciprocating.
I know and I don't want to come off as like snooty or whatever, but I've been accused of being snooty. I just walk I'm not it's not intentional. I'll talk to anybody, if you come up to me at a conference or at a church or whatever, as long as I can, and I'm not like, caught in between two,
Mm,
like I have to be at this place at this time,
right, right.
um, or whatever. So, all right, so here we go. Questions. Thank you, moderators. By the way, thank you, moderators, for capturing all the questions. Um, Sir Pierce, I got your comment there. I will definitely for sure do that right after this. Um, Teresa, please explain about the Palestine groups making peace with Israel. Who are they? Okay, and Mark, if you have any knowledge on this too, you can jump in whenever. But from what I understand, and again, I was out of the net pretty much all week, so I know that I listened to something from last week that Trump was going to meet with Netanyahu, and then I was out all week. So I know they met. I don't know hardly any of the details. I have not had time to watch any of the videos or anything because the flooding happened, and then
Mhm,
I've been trying to keep up with the news in Texas. But my understanding is that there's still some group is trying to make claims of somebody's trying to take over for the Palestinians. You've got whatever is left of Hamas. The only real deals and negotiations going on with them is for the trying to get the remainder of the hostages that are living and then the remains
mhm,
for those that are not living back into Israel. So they are, doing like little temporary ceasefires, things like that, and then they're hitting and they're ceasefires and then hitting. So it's just kind of right now it looks like a war of attrition with those guys. The Palestinian Authority in the what they call the West Bank, we call Judea and Samaria, is still trying to make a play for some type of control. I don't know if they have any say in Gaza. Those were two separate entities that didn't like each other.
mhm,
Um, and there's groups inside of Gaza that are trying to rise up. against Hamas because they're starving and they're just desperate, and so they're having all kind of internal issues that way. Honestly, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know who's talking to who. Steve Witkoff is what group he's talking to, but I guarantee you one thing: they are not going to be representing all of the Palestinians because they have so many different factions and they're so divided internally amongst themselves. So I
Hmm.
don't know who you make peace with there.
That's so true. An interesting thing that I've heard recently is, we support a ministry, messianic ministry, and they minister to Christians in Gaza, and they are growing even in the midst of all of this strife. So, if there's anything that I could pray for, it would be for them to have opportunities to share the gospel or just spiritual truth, because there's more going on there in terms of uh, spiritual truth being fed into these people than we even think about. We don't necessarily have a channel to that, so we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is I think from my understanding there was an initiative to encourage Palestinians to leave Gaza, to move on their own accord, and they or the Israel or whoever would help them go to wherever they wanted to go, Jordan or other places. So I know that a significant number of them have left, have no plans of ever going back.
Hmm.
If they try to rebuild in that area, it's going to take an immense amount of effort, time, energy to they're going to have to go underground, fill in all those tunnels. They're going to have to find all the unexploded ordnances that are booby trapped everywhere. I mean, that place is just it's like a giant rubble farm. It's all
It is.
rubble.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
A good resource for answering that question too could be John Haller tomorrow when he does his update. That could be very helpful.
yeah, yeah, that's true. He'll be all over that. Oh, speaking of John, so we'll be me, him, the technocracy roundtable will be on August 13th. I can't even believe it's August 13th already. Like, or it's like right around the corner.
No, yeah,
Uh,
it's soon.
so it's gone by. This summer's gone by fast. And then our school district in Texas, they start school in August 6th. I was
Why?
like, are you kidding me?
It's like smoking hot.
I have no idea. They get out in May, so I know some schools get out in June, but like ours get out I don't know, the last week of May, and then they
Oh,
go back early August. Like, but
wow.
they are going. They did change they're doing 4 days a week instead of five. So every
Oh,
Friday is off,
right,
and then each day is like 30 minutes, 45 minutes longer
right.
to
Yeah,
make up for the difference. So,
that's pretty
anyways,
common here.
maybe that. Okay, David Jack, question: at what point does Satan enter the Antichrist? For that, we would go to Revelation. I want to say it's over. It's after. It's either at or after the midpoint. And I'm not super dogmatic on this because I don't know exactly how this is all going to play out. I have the outline. We know what it says. Um, let's see. Or Revelation 12. I'm going to start here. It says, let me find the verse. So I'll start in 5. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. So I think that's speaking there about the rapture. And then it says, and then the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God that they should feed her for 1,260 days. So between the Christ or between the church going up and the midpoint where the Jews are going to have to flee, that's where we pick up at Matthew 24:15 with the abomination of desolation. And then Jesus is warning, hey, don't go back for your jacket. Don't do anything. Just go. Just run. And if you're, woe to those who are pregnant in those days. Woe to, it's if it's on a Sabbath that it happens. So that's that from that midpoint on. It's like the Jews are complete survival mode, and God is going to supernaturally protect them. I think we think in Petra or somewhere in the desert somewhere,
Hmm.
protect them somewhere
Yeah,
supernaturally.
likely.
And I do think it's when the Antichrist, it seemingly has some type of near death experience, or he's wounded, and in the Old Testament he's got an eye patch and he's got an arm withered. I don't know if that's part of the injury, but it seems like it's that point. And Satan does it. You got to think about it this way: Satan, the only other person that we know of, in the Bible that Satan possessed was Judas
Hmm.
Iscariot. And I am almost even of the mind that Peter was almost, I don't know if Satan was behind Peter, like whispering in his ear, telling him, "Hey, don't let Jesus get crucified,"
Hmm.
when Jesus was explaining that in Matthew 16, and Peter's like, "Oh, we would never let that happen,"
Right,
and
right.
Jesus like, "Get behind me, Satan," because that's something that Satan would try to say, "Hey, you don't have to do that. No, no, no,
Hmm.
that's crazy. That's
Hmm.
extreme.
Right.
Don't do that." So the voices of moderation often, I think, are satanically influenced. When people are trying to get two sides and they're getting you to compromise on something. God, come on, y'all both just meet in the middle, but you still have to compromise.
Right.
Compromise is Satan's currency,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So I think it's at the midpoint that it happens. It seems to be a change. I don't know that Satan stays in him, how long he stays in him, because clearly by the end, the Antichrist is tossed straight into the lake of fire with the false prophet alive.
Right.
But then Satan is cast into the abyss. So he's wrapped up in chains and cast in the abyss. So there's a divorcing of those two at some point.
Hmm. And
And
that's unclear when that happens.
yeah, so I know that they're going to be working in tandem together. When Satan enters and possesses him physically, we know that in Revelation 17 that there's some beast that comes up from the abyss, and seems to, I don't know if it's possessing the organization of the beast or the beast,
Hmm.
that the beast, the man, or the organization. Okay, Patrick, question: Second seal, peace is taken from the earth, implying a semblance of peace until that point. Jews will be in the temple until mid-trib, so could second seal be opened around that time? Okay, so I just made a slide. Let me see if I can share it. What are your thoughts on this while I'm kind of getting this organized here?
Um, so I guess the question is, will there be peace prior to the second seal being opened? And I would say it's kind of like how John Haller talks about it. It's a progressive um, thing. That's kind of how I see it. Like the first seal and that process overlaps in the second seal and overlaps with the third. And so whatever trauma the world is experiencing with that first seal being opened, whatever that is, and it looks like and manifests itself as, that's going to bring some semblance of peace away from the world. Um, so I don't think we're going to see the world in relative peace until the second seal.
You think we will or will not be in
I don't
peace?
think we will. No, I think the first seal opens,
Hmm.
and it's not like wars are going to be everywhere, but there's going to be a change, and we can even sort of anticipate what that spiritual change is going to be, and it's not going to be pleasant.
Yeah, let me show this real quick. Let's see. I want to remove myself. We know his plans for us is that he wants to have fellowship with us. So we know these are good. I'm not saying that we need to be scared. We know that these are good things coming. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know. So I think if God were going to add on to the end of Revelation to talk about what's coming in eternity future, I mean, we would need a library full of volumes
Hmm.
of things just on like one new chapter. It would just spawn so much new information that people are going to ponder and study. So I'm kind of the mind that right now we're going to see peace. Like, well, I think Israel's going to finish up what they're doing with Hamas. I think they're going to finish up with some of these operations. Some agreement will be worked out with the Iranians, and I think the regime, unfortunately, it seems like they're going to stay in place. Maybe not Khomeini, but somebody else, somebody that's anti-Israel will be in charge there. And then from there, it does seem like things will have calmed down, and that to me is what sets the stage for Gog and Magog, Ezekiel
Hmm.
38,
Right.
because Israel has to be dwelling securely in their land without walls, gates and villages or whatever. Um, Came back with your images.
And tell me if I'm missing something here, Pete, but it doesn't. Ezekiel 38 and 39 doesn't talk about there being a temple, right? So that's a marker for us, but it's not clear that there is a temple at that point. It's kind of hard. So it's hard to mark where Ezekiel the Gog and Magog war takes place.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Can you guys, if you guys can hear me, let me give me a thumbs up. Well, I think okay, Dan, I see what you're saying. Okay, so my sound disappeared when the thing came up, right? The image. So let me do this. Let me put. I already took
Oh,
it off. It's irrelevant at this point.
yeah.
The point that I was trying to make was is that we have the general outline. There are some timing issues inside of there that we aren't sure on. Um, we aren't sure on the gap between the rapture and the 70th week. If there is there a gap, does it immediately start right after? Is
Mhm.
it a month? Is it a year? We just don't know that for sure. Nobody knows that. I don't care who they are or what kind of degrees they have behind their name. None of us know that.
Mhm.
We can guess and speculate and theorize all day long, but that's all that is at that point. I used to think it was going to be a big gap, and then the further we've pressed on into time, now we're in the 2020s. I think that gap's considerably smaller because the technology, there isn't as much to make up in terms of technology between the world we live in now and the world that is the world of Revelation 13. So it's
Mhm.
the gap's a lot closer. So I think that gap in time is probably going to be shorter. We don't know the gap in time for immediately after the second coming. We have some timing things that the angel, I think it's Angel Gabriel, gave to Daniel in Daniel 12, the additional like 30 days and 75 days, or I'm
Mhm.
blanking right now on what exact days those were. Let's see, Daniel 12, it is. So blessed is he who waits and comes to 1,335 days. And then there's 1,290 days. So that each section of the tribulation is each half is 1,260 days. So there's an additional 30 days, and then there's an additional 60, 75 days on top of that. I don't know how that all factors in together. We don't know how long the little season is that comes at the end of the millennium that Satan is allowed to regather the nations to fight against Jesus
Mhm.
in Jerusalem. um and there's just not a lot about eternity. So that's all I was saying when the graphic was up and you guys couldn't see us. So all right, let's see. Man, there's a lot of questions. So I let me summarize that. I think there's going to be peace until Gog Magog. Peace will be. We'll get to that stage where peace will have somehow been achieved for Israel, security, etc. And I think the rapture happens. That triggers Gog Magog, and then at the conclusion of that, for the Jews who don't have the book of Revelation, they don't know, they don't have a big battle of Armageddon or anything like that, or Antichrist, false prophet. They don't have any of that stuff that we have in the New Testament. They don't even believe that stuff.
Hmm.
So for them, the big battle is this Gog Magog, and God is going to supernaturally deliver them. And after that, I think they make that covenant with death because they think they're untouchable. That's some, for some reason,
Right.
not understanding what's about to happen. Okay, let's see. Watchman Dave, 1987 question. At what point, as a man who's a babe in the Lord, and he has parentheses, myself, should I continue to watch in America how people are hurting our faith and harming Jews? When is a revolt justified through faith? At what
Hmm.
point, as a man who's a babe in the Lord, should I continue to watch in America how people are hurting our faith and harming Jews? When is a revolt just? Oh, okay. So he's asking at what point do we fight back? At what point Christians, Jews kind of stand up and take matters into our own hands? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure we ever take matters into our own hands
Yeah,
as a precursor to that. I mean, when do we fight? Well, we're constantly fighting, aren't we? I mean, that's what Ephesians 6 is about. It's about we put on all this armor, but we do it for the great purpose of just getting on our knees and praying, right? And so part of that means getting in the Word, being in fellowship, worship, um, and all for the purpose of prayer. And prayer is the fight, right? So do you, I think it's easy to get so angry that we want to physically battle with things. And I've known people that I've been close to, and they've wanted to get in their truck and go to a big city where there's a protest, there's an Antifa thing, and they just want to get out there and rumble. And the Holy Spirit sort of gets a hold of them before it's too late and says, "Hey, let's fight this a different way." So it's totally normal and good to be angry. It's wisdom that makes you say, "This is God's battle, and it's not mine because I can't win it on my own." If that makes any
yeah,
sense.
yeah. There's a passage I was looking for. It's talking about those who live by the sword and die by the sword.
Hmm.
In Revelation, it's weird. It's like kind of just like this little passage that just kind of stands out on its own. Jesus says, it says
Is it in the first three chapters?
no, I don't know if somebody in the chat knows what it is off top. I
Yeah,
can't think about what it is off the top of my
yeah,
head,
yeah.
but yeah, one of the things I mentioned this last time talking about near death experiences and stuff. One of the things that I I was listening to Dr. Burke, or I think he's a doctor, he may not be, but John Burke on this was that he was talking about the not eternality, but the what's the word? That when we pray, right, our prayers leave our mouths, leaves our minds, thoughts, whatever, and goes to God, and God exists in eternity.
Hmm.
Ergo, our
The,
prayers now are no longer confined to time,
yeah, it's infinite. Yeah.
and God exists outside of time. So I might be praying for something, or, my ancestor, I don't know, 20 generations ago could have said, "Hey, I want to pray for my great, 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 or whoever."
Hmm.
If all
Hmm.
my ancestors, somebody may have prayed that,
Sure.
or something,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And but our prayers are now outside of time and space, so
Right.
the prayers themselves are powerful. And you're spot on in that we need to fight this not with the way that the world fights, but with the way that God
Mhm.
has given us the tools to fight with, and let Him fight the
Mhm.
battles. And it is so much in our nature to
It
want
is.
revenge. It's so much in our
Yeah.
nature to
Yeah.
want to
And
lash out and to fight
God says,
and it
"Vengeance is mine," you know?
yeah.
And you know that we put God in a box so often when we think about prayer. And James says, the prayer of a righteous person is effective, right? Meaning it has power. There's something magical about it, but God honors that. And when we truly seek God's will, and there are things that when we pray, we know they're God's will because they're biblical. And so when we pray those biblical things, we know not only that God hears them, but God answers them. But He answers them almost always in ways that we don't fully appreciate.
Yeah.
So that's how we fight, and we have to live with this sort of sense of uncertainty and not feeling like we're ever going to get closure on some of these things because there, God is doing things that we will never fully understand.
Well, and two, God is outside of time and space. Again, he knows what's going to happen to you before you, I mean, he knew about that before the foundation of the world, like he already
Right.
knows,
Yeah.
and he already has the perfect solution, and he already has the perfect, everything that goes with that.
Hmm.
And it's really just, are we obedient in going to him with our prayers and concern and casting our prayers and
Yeah.
concerns on him to fight those battles that we are incapable of fighting, because a lot of these battles aren't fight battles that you and I can fight with muscles or with even with our intellect.
Not at
We
all.
these are things that are fought in the spiritual domain, and we just woefully. I mean, when it comes to like the I guess the angelic realm or whatever you want to call it, the
Hmm.
divine realm, we're all a bunch of newbies. We're all a bunch of babes, all of us, because we're limited by the flesh, and we can only see so much and do so much and hear so much, and we're all
Yeah.
helpless babies in front. If these things were allowed to like kill us or do whatever they wanted with us, it would be humanity would be
Instantly.
over in about 4 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
They're very mighty. One point on that too, Peter, I think this is just hugely overlooked, and that is collective prayer. It's easy for us to be committed to solitary prayer, but and I've seen this recently with a ministry that I've been working with. We have dedicated every day in July to come and pray for this one ministry. It's a school here in Roseburg, and we are meeting for, and it's just 15 minutes, but we're trying to get a movement of people in the community and in this specific church to come and join us because it's not that numbers are important. It's about uh, inviting God's presence to be there to change lives and hearts, right? And so that's what's exciting. So if you really want to see these big changes in big things, I would encourage you to start asking God, how can you get a movement of prayer collectively with people that are like-minded that you can meet with
mhm.
physically? And it doesn't have to be 30 people. If it's two or three, that's wonderful. But but there is a real power and it. I mean, the whole theme of tonight is iron sharpening iron, right? And that's nowhere greater will you find a sharpening of each other when you pray together, and it's that powerful.
Yeah. And it's we've been so conditioned in this world to think that power or that right is done through might. It's done through action. It's done through swords and bullets and
Right.
fighting and everything else. And look, man, I love the UFC. Like I love watching mixed martial arts, judo, wrestling. I just like contact sports, in
Yeah.
general. But I've been in a lot of fights. I mean, a lot of fights. So I'm just saying that it's not the answer. I mean, there's no, even if you win, there's no upside to it,
Yeah.
other than if you're attacked and you got to defend yourself, that's one
Right.
thing.
Right.
Obviously you should fight back.
Yeah.
But if you're using that as a way to solve some issue, I think that's not the right answer.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, I turn off the news, man. I don't even watch the news anymore. If I need news, I go. if I hear about an event, I'll go find it, look it up, watch it, and I watch local stuff, news, weather, you know, that kind of stuff. But like this, the nonstop Fox or CNN or
Yeah.
whoever, I just turn all that stuff off.
And do you know
You
what
will
it
just be stress yourself out
oh,
watching this stuff.
and what it does to us spiritually is it confuses us, right? And it makes us angry and it makes us feel like the world is
Anxious.
completely out of control. And it just affects us emotionally and intellectually. We can't make sense of things because it's 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 happening rapidly and it's happening irrationally. And so that together is meant to confuse us. And so a
Yeah.
lot of media, that's really the point, even if the people that are saying it don't understand. The spirit behind it is exactly for that purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim wanted to remind us about JD, Pastor JD's wife, Kelly. Her cancer is spread to her spine.
Oh, I didn't
So I
know.
encourage everybody here to lift her up in prayer. Oh, yeah.
When did he share that?
About a week ago, maybe.
Oh, okay.
It's been about a week, maybe 2 weeks. But you need to keep praying for her, praying for that the Lord is going to be able to heal her and hold her healthy until he comes, which we think is very soon.
Yeah.
But for Catalin, or I'm sorry, thank you, Catalin. For Heather, what did it mean when Jesus said, "Let the dead bury their dead"? What passage is that in? Let me see.
I thought it was in John. Maybe it's in Matthew.
Yeah, I've had to learn this new like computer system
Yeah.
this last couple of weeks, so
Well, in
I have been
general, the part
focused
of
on
that
that.
whole passage is about following uh, life, right? And Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." It's it's following Jesus as a life giver, right? And so when we follow things that don't give us life, that's part of the dynamic that Jesus is talking about there.
I got it here. It's in Matthew 8. So it says, yeah, when Jesus saw a great multitude about him, he gave a command to depart to the other side. Then a certain scribe came and said to him, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Then another of his disciples said to him, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." And I think this is just my take on it. It's very similar to the situation with the rich man, where the rich man
Mhm.
says, "Hey, I
Right.
follow the law. I do all this stuff. What do I have left to do?" And Jesus said, "Sell everything you have and
Mhm.
follow me," or something. And the guy went away sad, right?
Yeah.
And I think that in this instance here, that this guy, to some degree, wanted to follow Jesus, but then he had these other things, or like he had to take care of, and he's like, "Man, they're dead.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
going to care like where their body is right there. Let the dead bury their own."
Yeah. And it's a,
So I that's how I saw it. But
Mhm. Yeah, and it's really an example of, hey, what is holding you from following Jesus? It's an example of the things of the world often just keep us from making that commitment to just follow. And in that case, the case with the wealth, it's hey, this guy had a lot of money and he wanted to hold on to a little bit to the world and a little bit to Jesus. And that was what the example that Jesus was trying to say is like, no, this is about dying to self. It's about taking up your cross, following him. And that requires death to self, right? And that's a process that doesn't happen overnight. So there are things in the world that are going to hold on to us, and sometimes we don't even know they're holding on to us, but when we realize they are, and we ask God for God's help to either eliminate them or diminish them, then that frees us up to do that. So there's all these all these little examples that Jesus talks about, like, but you want to do this too, and a little bit of this. So,
Mm. Well, and you got to remember too that when Jesus came the first time, he offered them the kingdom, and he laid it out there in Matthew 5 and said, "Here's the Sermon on the Mount." And at the end of it, he concludes with, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect."
mhm.
Well, who can follow that? I mean,
Yeah,
nobody
right.
can follow that. That's impossible. But he laid out here's what it's going to physically require you to have the kingdom come to the earth without a a requisite sacrifice.
Mhm.
Talking about himself.
Right.
Here's what you need for the kingdom without my dying on the cross first. In so many words. And it's hard. It's impossible, and that's why I think so many people turned away. They were like, "We can't do that. It's impossible." Even when the Pharisees said, "Hey, like." They're talking about lust or adultery as the stoning offense.
Mhm.
He's like, you've already committed adultery if you've had that thought in your head, in your
Mhm.
heart.
Right.
And at that point, they knew they were done. Like, there's no competing against. Like, there, how can you compete against that?
Right.
So I think the kingdom was legitimately offered, except in order for them to inherit that kingdom, they had to be essentially perfect immortal people, like that were flawless and sinless, and
Yeah.
nobody could keep that. So it was necessary for him to die. But
And
by
they
dying,
realized.
then he opens it up. And then our righteousness, and here's why it's so different. And so we can't even fathom how much different this is than the way it was, is that our salvation isn't dependent upon us. It's depending on what Christ did. It's just
Mhm.
dependent on us simply to believe in the one that Christ sent, or the one that God sent, which is his son Christ. And when we do that and trust in him to save us because we can't save ourselves, that's where that transformation happens inside.
Right.
And it's all about the motives of the heart. Why are you doing this?
Mhm.
And I think that's where God is looking at our hearts to look at the intentions of what we have. But I think he looked at that guy's heart, and the guy's like, "Hey, I want to follow you, but I got to go do this other thing first." And that's why Jesus said that, just to, like, they're dead. Let them bury
Yeah.
themselves or their
Right.
own.
Right.
But
Find
okay.
life. That's what he was saying.
Yeah. Sammy Thompson question: how do I get over the frustration of waiting for the rapture? My mental health is seriously declining. Well, I first of all, I said this. I had an article. I don't even know how long now. A year, 2 years. Called, I think it was called "Embrace the Suck," and we were talking about this. The roller coaster ride that a lot of watchers are on, because they get caught up in these high watch times, and the high watch times come and then they go,
Mhm.
and then they come and they go. And I think high watch times, I'm not going to be a wet blanket and say you shouldn't have those, because if you can handle that and you can handle, I hold on to those high watch times very loosely. I watch them, and I'm interested in them, and I'm looking at this upcoming Tish B'Av, and I get
Mhm.
excited around that time. But
Right.
but
Yeah.
I'm if it comes and goes, I am not completely wedded to that date, and I'm not like, my hopes aren't dashed because that day came and went. We know we're in the season. We can see the day approaching, because we can't see the rapture approaching, but we can see the architecture and the infrastructure for the beast kingdom being built there in front of us in the
Mhm.
distance. And we can say, oh man, that if you've ever watched construction go up, I mean, we're watching everything being built right there in front of us. So
Mhm.
they're almost done. So that tells us that we're, almost out of here.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, good.
And that should be encouraging to us. And I like to think about it like my wife describes it as stop signs, right? So so this Tish B'Av, uh, it actually falls on my daughter's birthday, so it's August 3rd, right? And it is a stop sign, and it is not, if something doesn't happen at that moment, it's okay. And and so it's okay to have several of those stop signs, but we should be encouraged, because as we look and we watch the greater world and all of these things coming together, it 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 does tell us that things are closer than we even know. Now, the other thing that I would say about this that I think is speaking to this gentleman's mental health is it's easy for people to get caught up in watching so closely that they forget to enjoy life. And a lot of people that I've known over the years stop pursuing things they're passionate about, whether it's work or it's a hobby, or they kind of check out of relationships because it's all going to be over soon and we'll be in heaven. But I think God wants us to occupy and live life fully, and part of that is what we're talking about tonight: relationships. Right? If you feel lonely or you feel depressed or there's something going on, my encouragement to you is find somebody that you can connect with and do things that you enjoy, that you know that you enjoy doing, and keep watching, but hold loosely to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would encourage that too. And I would say, ladies, if you have another lady that's around your age that's kind of in the area, maybe you guys can, or a group of ladies. I would encourage that, obviously, for you guys to talk and maybe do some virtual Bible studies if you aren't close enough to actually,
Hmm.
you know, travel to each other. But um, same with
Absolutely.
the guys.
Yeah.
But my point is that we have to occupy until he comes. I was kind of that mindset early on too. I mean, I felt like you know it was that 24/7, and as I stated at the beginning, this is a very isolating topic because people don't want to talk about what's coming, even though they're going to spend the rest of their life and in the future. They don't want to talk about or think about the future. They want things to be like they've always been, kind of this normalcy bias. They don't want anything that rocks their worldview. And I was thinking about this today. Have I ever really felt safe? And I truly felt safe. Like, not a care in the world kind of safe, other than, when you're a baby or a toddler and you don't really know any different. And I could say kind of no. And I had a great mother, a great father, when he
Yeah.
was there. He wasn't abusive or anything like that. Um, and neither of my parents were, for that matter. But I'm just saying, like, there's always that uncertainty with a divorce or with a move or with you fitting in at a new school, and you got the pressures of being the new kid, or
Yeah.
whatever the case is, not
Yeah.
having any money, not having enough money to buy your groceries. I mean, there's kids today have so much more uncertainty in their lives than we did, because their world is so much more complicated
Hmm.
um, than they were back when we were growing up. Times were much simpler,
Hmm.
and we were stressed, and I could say I didn't truly feel safe in the sense safe in the whole sense of that word.
Hmm.
Things were familiar and things were normal. Like, I knew what like normal was for me growing up, but normal, it doesn't always equate to safe. And how can I, as a parent, give safe if I don't know what true safety means? And I don't mean just like a roof over the head, clothes
Hmm.
on their back, and food in their belly. I mean, like, a sense of safe. And maybe that's something we talk about in a future podcast, but like, or
Yeah.
discussion. But I feel like the question about being so ready to leave this world, that you put yourself in such a state that you can't enjoy anything in the here and now,
Hmm.
because you're already there, and your body's just stuck back here. You're just waiting for the two to marry. And look, we have it. It's a blessed hope. It's something that God gave us. God didn't have to rapture us. He didn't have to do any of this stuff for us.
Hmm.
He's doing this for his own purposes and his own reasons, and they're amazing and they're awesome. And we can't wait for that day to come.
Yeah.
Now, if the rapture is going to be some incredibly painful event, that, yeah, we would change, but it's going to be like this Hollywood style metamorphosis, and we'd be in excruciating pain, changing from immortal, or from mortal to
Right.
immortal. Like, none of us would be looking forward to, like, oh, it's like looking forward to a root canal or something,
That's
without
not the blessed
anesthesia.
hope. Yeah. I don't want to hope that.
But God made it this way so that it would be like that in an instant, and all these amazing things would change, as would
Hmm.
happen, and our world would instantly, and our life would instantly be better.
Yeah.
but God did not call you to abandon the life that he gave you now just to. I look at that like those guys, the monks in the 1500s or whatever, that just lived in absolute solitude
Mhm.
and poverty and prayed, 20 of the 24 hours of the day.
Mhm.
And they just, for what God didn't call us to do that. God
Right,
called us to
right.
go out and make disciples of all nations
Yeah,
and to
yeah,
share the gospel and
and
to be the salt and the light, not to sequester ourselves off in these little hidey holes from the
right.
world. We're supposed to be engaging with our neighbors and with our family and our coworkers, and it's hard. It's hard to do that. We don't want to make ourselves vulnerable in that way to those people that see us every day,
Mhm.
and we have to live with them and work with them, and they don't know maybe the true us, but they get enough of us that they
We
know
get enough
God.
of us,
Yeah,
right.
so
And it's
that
hard to
and that's
it's hard to live and
good.
plan and think about the future, what about my career? What about, am I gonna get to see my kids graduate or this and that? And, you're gonna live in this dynamic tension between planning and just sort of being ready to depart immediately, right? So, and part of that, at least in my life, required me to dig into the Proverbs because the Proverbs gave me and Ecclesiastes is part of this because it's
Yeah.
Solomon, you know Solomon in this really kind of fused weird state near the end of his life, and he's processing things almost like a broken person, and you come at it with a template almost to see, how do I plan for my life, how do I build relationships, how do I even communicate effectively, and that's all addressed in the Proverbs. And if you can sort of dig into it a little bit, it does comfort because it gives you a plan almost to live life, not just daily, but incrementally, having stop signs, and maybe the stop signs get farther ahead. We don't know. But having that plan and having what I mean, that's the whole chapter one of Proverbs is wisdom is speaking, actually, like he's anthropomorphized, and he's saying, I am calling to you in the streets so that you can live a disciplined and successful life. And it's Proverbs 1:5. And and so that's what has been so helpful to me, and I know to so many other people, it's a great place to start to try to make sense of that hurt.
Yeah. You know what? So Proverbs does an amazing job of setting your mindset to the things of God and off of the things of man, because the things of man are so futile and so weak and feeble compared to God's ways and God's thoughts, that they don't really even compare. And so I think here's a great idea. Here's a great example for a mindset, right? Words are powerful. I know that we used to say growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But words are powerful. And when you embrace a phrase, for example, I embraced this phrase a while back on my initial journey to start losing weight. It was eat to live, don't live to eat. And I used to live to eat. Everything I wanted to go do that I considered fun always had massive food, and it was always centered around food. And I made the food this kind of idol in my life, that I had to have this, I had to eat this, I whatever.
Mhm.
And when I changed that around and I just thought, okay, well, now it's really about eating just to live, and it's not all about the food, and I don't make it about the food, and I make it about something else, the
Mhm.
fellowship, or I make it about whatever, work or something. Then it just changes your mindset and how you look at food.
Mhm.
Another phrase that I love: hurt people hurt people. And so when somebody hurts me, I have to realize that they're hurt, because that's why they're hurting. If they're happy, healthy, they wouldn't be out hurting people
Mhm.
intentionally.
Right.
Hurt people hurt people. And so when somebody hurts you, you can realize, instead of lashing back out at them in anger, maybe it's this time you look back to them and think with more empathy or sympathy or whatever, and think, okay, well, something is really causing them to lash out where they normally wouldn't have. And now I can either pray for them, or I can even go and say, to give an encouraging word, said, hey, I don't know what's going on with your life, but I'll keep you, if you let me, I'll pray for you. And you know,
Mm.
that's how we're called to respond and diffuse. these crazy situations sometimes that come
Mhm.
up,
Yeah.
and we have to go against our human nature. Our human nature wants to lash out. Our human nature wants to come back with the middle finger of paradise, with the bird of paradise, what they used to call the middle finger, the one finger salute or
That's not
something.
what I called it. I don't know.
I mean, well, whatever. Like, we want to physically react because it gives us a sense of,
Of power.
we get a dopamine rush or
Yeah.
something because
Right.
we've reacted to something.
Yeah.
But God's calling us to reject that nature, that calling, that carnal nature, and just hand it to Him and let Him deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And He is fully equipped and capable and equipped to handle all of our problems,
Hmm. Yeah.
and run the entire universe and all the future and eternity. You can do all that without even breaking a sweat.
Yeah, so true. Absolutely, I totally agree. And a lot of what you were just saying is that reaction that we have is we want to be in control of it. Like, how dare you hurt me? I'm going to take control of the situation and I'm going to lash back out. But what you had said is maybe they're broken too, right? So maybe praying for them or come alongside them or just asking a clarifying question is all you need. I've never had somebody say, if I've asked them, can I pray for you? Even right then and there, total atheists, they're like, sure. So I mean, I'm sure it happens, but it's rare. So, step out. That's an opportunity for you.
Yeah. And I always challenged atheists, like, hey, man, if you don't believe in God, just, don't do it right now, but you challenge God.
Yeah,
Ask him
yeah,
to show himself, prove himself to you, and I
yeah.
guarantee you he will.
No sweat to you.
Yeah, because that's nothing. That's like blinking his eye. God's blinking his eye. That's about as much. That's like running the universe right there. It just doesn't. It does no energy to him. All right. Jason Garza asks, "Will with all of the peace talks, ceasefires, how can the Antichrist bring peace?" So the way I understand it is that there is going to be a degree of peace achieved prior to Gog and Magog,
Hmm.
which puts Israel, I guess, lulls them into a sense of complacency to a little bit. That idea that they're lulled into complacency implies time, because that takes time to become complacent.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's complacency. I think maybe it's overconfidence, just like on October 7th, 23, that it seemed that they were just kind of this like backwater, like backwards,
Hmm.
terrorist group that were disorganized, etc. Had no idea that they were planning October 7th, but they did, and they took advantage of this overconfidence that Israel had on their border security and their IDF and all the Mossad and all that.
Hmm.
So I think Gog and Magog does give them a false sense of peace and security at the back end when God delivers them and wipes out all their enemies. So I'm not convinced that the white horse, the rider on the white horse there in Revelation 6, is necessarily like this. Daniel 9:27 is a peace covenant. It could be a covenant about normalization, or
Hmm.
some other kind of you know, uh, 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 treaty to let them rebuild their third temple. I mean, we don't know exactly what it's going to entail. We just know that it's between Israel, the Antichrist, and other nations that are involved in this. So,
Right.
um, I don't know. Your thoughts?
I think, you know, when we're thinking about the lead up to Gog and Magog, it does say that they're living in security, and so for the last month or so, with the war with Iran and Hezbollah being decimated and Hamas almost completely gone, there's so much talk that, well, if they're all defeated or at least immobilized to some degree, then that's what facilitates this peace where they're not threatened and there's no borders or there's no walls, how it's described in chapter 38. um, I you know I wonder if when that happens, if part of the problem is Israel has is apathy. It may feed into their spiritual apathy, like, well, hey, we did it on our own. And that's when the war happens and they're divinely and supernaturally rescued. that apathy is I would hope completely changed into wonder, but it's hard to know.
Yeah. Well, it seems to be enough. We know that it seems to indicate that Gog happens before the midpoint of the tribulation because there's a temple standing at that point that the Antichrist is able to desecrate.
Hmm.
Um, I know some other, I don't know, I know Lee, I think, used to hold to a later, or I don't know, there's some teachers that are holding to like a later fulfillment of Ezekiel 38. I just hold to that it happens because of the rapture.
Later
The
in
rapture
in
creates
in
this crisis, and yeah, then allows for everything to kind of subsequent to follow.
like later after the midpoint, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I can't remember who it is. Somebody holds to it that it's at the end of it's after the midpoint or somewhere. Um, and I can't. I wanted to think it was Lee, but I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure it was him or not, or
yeah,
maybe Bill Salas or somebody else. But
yeah. I don't know.
I simply believe that it happens because of the rapture. That the rapture is the crisis that triggers the Russia, Turkey, Iran, Libya, put all these named nations to kind of take advantage of the global chaos in the West to march
Mhm.
against Israel.
Right.
And I don't know how that works with how that catches Israel by surprise. The only thing I can think of is it's the rapture. Something happens with the rapture. Maybe it does have some type of
Yeah.
EMP effect on the satellites or something, and whatever. There may be some period of time where there's come global disarray, and that's where these guys want to take advantage of that chaos.
Right. Right.
So,
So
okay,
is
Pamela
there
asks,
simultaneously peace and chaos? How does that all work? We just it'll happen in a way that we wouldn't expect, I'm sure.
yeah, I mean, just Revelation 6, when we talk about the introduction of the beast, I guess one of the questions is whether or not Revelation 6 is the man, the Antichrist, or if he's the system, the
Mm.
like the beast
The beast
system.
system. Yeah.
Because the other horsemen don't seem to be, I know they're individual, they're personified symbolically, or
Hmm.
these beings are representing some type of, their unleashing represents some type of unleashing on the world at that time.
Hmm.
So they're all represented by somebody riding a horse. And so it seems to indicate that like death, war, famine, pestilence, those aren't individual men. Those are that might be a spirit or some kind of a
Right. Right.
demonic force that's unleashed. But it says here that 6:1 or 6:2, and I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. So that to me doesn't seem to indicate that he is all about peace. We assume because he has a bow with no arrows that he
Hmm.
is got some level of strength, but he's not exercising his strength militarily.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that he's not imposing his will in a very forceful way, just like Trump does. Like, hey, you either do this, or we're going to
Right.
hit you with a 80% tariff, or
Right.
we're going to drop this Moab on you, or we're going to whatever. I
Sure.
mean, there's that kind of coercion where you don't really have a choice but to acquiesce or to face,
Yeah. And that could be a
conflict.
technocrat as easily as it could be a politician, right? So
Yeah,
they're imposing their will on cryptocurrency or on our life in some way that doesn't isn't violent, but it is
forceful.
coercive. Yeah,
Yeah,
forceful.
coercive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, Pamela asked, "What are your thoughts on Doug Woodward's two books rebooting the Bible?" Um,
Um,
I'm friends with Doug, and I generally I hold him in high regard, so that's not that's not an issue necessarily. If I remember correctly, and I have the books and I read through them a long time ago, probably not as closely as I should have now that I can't like recall like specific stuff on them. But if I want to think they were like leaning into the Septuagint's translation of the Old Testament, or incorporating some of that stuff from the Septuagint into our, traditional Masoretic text for the
Mm,
Old Testament. So, example, like the timelines, like there's some significant differences in time from Genesis 5 and 10 that add, like, or let's see, they would have added 1500 years to man's timeline already. So
mhm,
they would have the Septuagint has the 6,000th year, where if God's going to come back, or the God has modeled humanity in the days of creation, so that we would go 6,000 years, and at the end of the 6,000th year, that's when God would initiate the kingdom, etc. Second coming, all that stuff.
right, right.
They thought that was going to happen back in the year 500,
Mm, mhm,
because the sometime in the year 500 was going to be the 6,000th year, because of Septuagint added that 1500 years, pushing time, Adam and Eve, back another 1500
mm,
years.
mhm.
Now there is some very, very, very tempting theories about the the age, the timing of the flood, and then how much time happened from the flood to the Tower of Babel, and then how were the pyramids built, and like there's this whole gigantic, massive rabbit hole that you could go down, and just go down and go down forever on that stuff, and it's fascinating. That doesn't make it true, though.
It
It's fascinating, but that
right,
doesn't make it true.
correct.
Clearly, the Septuagint's timeline, in terms of their chronology, is wrong, or God is not using any kind of pattern at all for how he's going to structure the length of mankind.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. Your thoughts?
I don't know the books. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Never
sorry.
mind.
Sorry. I wish I had more to say.
I just want to say that that was incredibly profound, Mark. Just you have such a way with
Did I
putting your
did I
thoughts in.
express myself well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a lot I don't know. I'm just gonna say it up
Uh,
front.
yeah, I reserve the right to say I don't know. Some
Yeah.
of this stuff I won't know. Hammer time. Are there any updates on the red heifers and the temple sacrifices? So I did watch the thing today. They did declare they had a heifer ceremony that they declared one of them perfect. So one of the five heifers that came from Texas are considered perfect. I have not heard anything on the sacrifice. I think they've done some trial practices or whatever,
I think they did one
but I don't think.
recently, just a few days ago, but it was an
Yeah,
imperfect. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that was just a practice. It wasn't the real deal, but
Mhm, mhm.
they have declared one of the heifers perfect. So it means that it has no white hairs or black hairs. And they said, one of the things that was interesting is that, what if we had a red heifer that had a white hair, but then the white hair fell out? So does
Yeah.
that make it's perfect again? So I
Yeah.
don't know. So they're
I don't
things
know.
they're trying to rediscover. I think the last time they did it was, what, in the first century. I don't know the last time.
Yeah,
It's
before the
been
temple was destroyed, yeah.
2,000 years, so it's been a minute. All right. Well, hey, that's it. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. Mark's been a pleasure. Do you have any closing thoughts, comments you want to make before we
Uh,
conclude?
well, I just wanna say that when times are confusing like they are, and you feel lonely because you don't have anybody to process this stuff with you, I would ask God to bring someone into your life that's like-minded, and connect with them. And that is just a wonderful gift that the Lord will provide. And He doesn't want you to be isolated and lonely. And this is wonderful community. The Rev 310 community is a great place to start. But I would even pray that if you could meet somebody in person in your community that you can connect with, and maybe you have to travel a little bit every month to connect with somebody on a weekend, but that connection is going to be really valuable for not just your mental health, but your spiritual health.
Yeah. Amen. We all need people, to vent and to
Yeah.
lean on, to laugh with. I mean, look, guys, y'all. Well, I know when I was hardcore into prophecy, I didn't laugh a lot because I was just constantly looking at the world, and I had such a burning desire to get that out to everybody, and I still do. But I
Mhm,
also realize that um, I have to take care of myself physically. I have to take care of myself emotionally, spiritually, intellectually.
mhm,
I mean, it's not gonna. And the reason this channel exists tonight, or this program tonight, is that it's all about us living in these times,
mhm,
the life that we live, the relationships that we have, the physical issues that we have, the mental, emotional, spiritual issues that we have, and how we can build each other up and pray for each other in times like this. This is the most important part of the Watchman community right here.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And
Is
it's so
is
easy to miss. It's so easy to forget because we're starting to, we wanna look at the bigger things, the bigger picture, and then we forget, like, we have to live every day. And God He wants us to find joy in that too. We're not to
Yeah,
be like those monks that you were talking about earlier. That's not the life God called us to.
that's not
Laugh,
life, man.
enjoy. No, yeah. Live life.
Let me close with this. This is from Hebrews 12 or Hebrews 10. Most of us are familiar with the last part of this verse, but let me read all of it. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who is promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. And we see the day approaching, and this is why this is on tonight. This is why Chooch runs his channel, why Tyler runs his channel, Brian Leach runs his channel, Sunshine Church in New Mexico, Andy Woods, Ken Ortiz. I mean, on and on. Ty
Yeah.
Green. We have a God has burdened us with this the need to share what He's put on our hearts, because that's going to be impactful for some people.
Mhm.
Some of my Watchmen brothers, they love to focus on bricks. Some love to focus on some other things, in particular. And I've gone through all those phases in my time, and I've always come back to this idea of what's ailing me the most, and it's relationships, and it's loneliness. It's all of these
Mm,
things that we deal with constantly.
mhm.
I know that so many of you have to deal with those things as well. So, anyways,
Yes.
uh, I'll keep going on if I don't stop myself. So, God bless you guys. Mark, hang on for a second. God
Yep.
bless y'all. Have a great night. I will be on tomorrow, speaking live from Winchester, Kentucky. Again, if as soon as I get the link, I'll put it out there. But if you look that up in YouTube, should be around 10 p.m. or 10 p.m., 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or no, no, no. Kentucky's weird. Like half the state's Eastern, and the other half's Central. And I can't remember where that dividing line is, but I think I'm on Eastern. I think it might be
Mm,
Central, but I think it might be Eastern. I think it's Eastern.
okay.
So sorry to confuse you guys, but it'll be somewhere around 10 Eastern time. So God bless you all. Take care, and see you next time.
Good night.